driven to the Shanghai Metals Exchange, where it's offloaded to all of the countries that are buying and taking delivery of metals, including the PBOC. Silver is the value of a generation. You have to have...
The news has been full of stories about how central banks are buying up gold like crazy. In 2022, countries led by China, Turkey, and India began adding to their gold stocks at the fastest rate in decades. Since then, gold has been one of the best performing assets in the world in 2024, thanks to the world's top banks' ravenous demand for the yellow metal. The World Gold Council says that central banks may be on track to buy as much gold or even more than they did in 2022 and 2023. The world's official gold reserves rose by 290 metric tons in the first quarter of this year, which is the biggest increase in a first quarter in over 24 years and 69% higher than the 5-year quarterly average. The gold accumulation continued in the second quarter, with central bank respondents to different surveys saying they plan to buy even more gold for their reserves within the next 12 months. While the accumulation of gold is widely reported and has had clear effects on prices, the same can't be said for silver. Not only is the price of silver still far from its previous all-time high, but there isn't much news about the central bank's accumulation of silver. Andy Schectman is sure that central banks are not only buying gold, but also silver. He thinks that they are doing this by taking advantage of the fact that the West is squeezing the much smaller silver market to secretly build up their silver stocks. Andy is sure that it is much more secretive to accumulate silver because central banks have learned how the West manipulates the silver market and are ready to take them on at their own game. He said this in a recent talk with Jess Day at Commodity Culture. Andy does a great job of explaining why central banks are buying so much silver, especially India, which wants to build a huge solar panel project. He also talks about how the markets are losing silver, what silver is really worth more than what it's selling for now, and why the price of silver will go through the roof all at once. Many people don't realize how close skyrocket wildly really is. As we show clips from the video, please take a moment to like it, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notifications bell to be told right away every time we post a new video. Thanks for your support and enjoy the video.
Strong fingertips. But this Western suppression, which has been going on for a long time, never had these countries coordinated, sophisticated, wealthy enough, cunning enough to stand for delivery. But they are, and it is the Achilles heel. It's one of these deals where we will wake up one day. If gold continues, if gold gets above 2,500 and climbing, you'll see silver, bang, take off. They can't continue to hold it down. And I think this is just the very beginning. So it's the value of a generation. I mean that in my soul. There are very few assets that are depleting in nature. Keith Neumeyer will tell you it's coming out of the ground at 7-1. After 5,000 years of it coming out of the ground at 16-1. Because it's held in nature in a form called epithermal, like your skin is epidermis, epithermal right at the surface. Big deposits were gone long time ago. So it's needed in military, in green, in digital, in electronics, and it's experienced a monetary renaissance. And yet we're supposed to believe that it's coming out of the ground at 7-1, but it should be valued at 80-1. So God's ratio says 7-1, man's price in the West says 80-1. And I would simply say this. There was a statement made by the head of the Shanghai Gold Exchange in 2014. And I'll throw silver into this equation too. He said, when China is allowed to speak at the table, the real value and the real price of gold will be revealed. Well, the same thing will be true about silver. And Zoltan Pozsar will go down as one of the smartest people ever who told us all we are now entering Bretton Woods 3, a system about who's got the commodities. And so these countries that are gobbling everything up, well, they're using the suppression that we've been fostering forever against us, where 8 stupid banks can hold the price down of a commodity that is massively acquired and needed, distorting its real value forever, as dumb as a mud wall. Why? Well, there's your why. Because it's needed to fight wars and build high-tech weaponry. So yeah, the most undervalued, underappreciated, best value of anything I've ever seen in 35 years of finance. I think that solar power is kind of a ruse in the respect of what they're trying to tell us all the silver demand is coming from. I mean, look, if you look at the demand numbers, industrial 9%, electronic and electrical 9%, brazing alloys and solders 3%, other industrial 9%, jewelry 4%, silverware 7%, and photovoltaics, which are the panels, 20%. They're telling you it's by twice the biggest demand center for silver. Now, look, in China, we just saw a 5 gigawatt solar power plant come into commercial operation. It's the biggest in the world. So there is some demand certainly for it, and it's real. But I think, in essence, the real demand for silver is in high-tech aerospace, submarines, and high-tech weapons. If 500 ounces or a mint box of Silver Eagles in the tip of a Tomahawk cruise missile, how many have we fired in the past few years? How many have all of these countries in wars fired? How do you make them without it? So I think cratering a demand for silver ain't going to happen because it's disappearing in nature. It went from 16 to 1 to now 7 to 1. It's disappearing because all of the large, so much so that only 25 to 30% of all the silver mined last year came from companies like Heath Newmeyer's, who mine silver like First Majestic. That's 25 to 30% of 100%. So that means 75% came from other places. Why would that be? Majority comes from byproduct mining companies who are never looking for silver and just stumble across it as they're mining some other metal, some other asset. So it's so hard to find that there's only a handful of real silver companies because it's so hard to find. And so, no, I honestly, Jesse, I think that while it's a valid question, I think it's misdirection. And yeah, solar panels are real, and it does take certainly a certain amount of silver to do this. These new panels take twice the amount as the old ones. But yeah, I don't know to what degree solar will be powering the major cities, other than to say, you have the biggest one in the world that just went operational, taking over as the world's largest operating photovoltaic facility. So there is some truth in it, but to believe that is by a factor of 2, double, that's the largest demand source for silver. No, that's not. I don't believe that is. But I also don't think it will crater it. I just think there are too many uses for silver that are growing by the day that we're not really privy to. And so, no, I think it's the value of a generation.
Leg up in the silver bull market.
Yeah, I mean, it's been shocking. I mean, for the last 6 months, the lack of Western participation has been shocking. The drawdowns in the ETFs, even though some of that would be delivering metal, taking delivery out of the ETFs for the authorized participants, but the drawdowns in the ETFs, the lack of investor demand in the West has been startling. And albeit it represents a very large proportion of those sales that we do. Now, don't get me wrong. Last year was our biggest year by far. And you take that out of the equation, we're still on pace to do better than every year except last year. And 2022, 2021, 2020 were huge years. It's not completely, totally been abandoned. And almost, every single order we do has in some capacity has silver in it. But it's nowhere near the allocation it should be. Rick Rule talks about it all the time. If you take the entire financial matrix from Joe and Jane Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund, that allocation is less than 0.5%. So yes, it's very small, but I will tell you that if something happens, a bank problem, commercial real estate leading to bank bail-ins, which most people don't even know was written into law in the Dodd-Frank Act, because Silicon and Signature were bailed out illegally, as the subcommittee hearing with Janet Yellen and the Oklahoma senator paid homage to. But people don't know that if a bank fails, a big one, it won't be bailed out anymore. It will be bailed in. The amount of fear that would create. We added 14,000 clients in 45 days when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank failed, and they were illegally bailed out. Evidently, it was an uber majority vote between the FOMC, the FDIC, Janet Yellen, and the president because they were too systemic. But when asked, would this happen again, Janet said, not unless that same thing happens, where it's a majority uber vote by all of those parties involved. Otherwise, they will be bailed in. The other banks that have failed have been gobbled up, consolidated with JP Morgan and others. That won't go on forever. And you see a big bank fail and is bailed in, where everything over FDIC goes to bail in the bank. In other words, 250,000 or 500 if you're a couple, it's gone and goes to bail in the bank. The amount of fear that would create, like that, you would see a rush into precious metals that would bankrupt the availability of supply within 24 hours. It's a very much a just-in-time business. You can stock up as much as you want, but there is a cost for buying large amounts of inventory, holding it, financing it if you don't have the cash, and even if you do, the cost of carry of that sitting in your warehouse, and then you have to hedge it, and all of the things involved with risk and risk mediation. And then you talk about the high premiums that we've seen over the last several years that you can't hedge that premium. Premiums have come down a lot now. You can hedge the metal content, but not the premium. And those have come down to where prices are very attractive. It will go down to me both as, I don't know, a mystery why people don't see what we talk about. Maybe it's because they can't get out of the way of what they never see coming because the media doesn't talk about it. You got to go to alternative sources like you and me to find this information. But I will also say it's probably the biggest contrarian indicator of my life. At the same time, the most well-funded and more relevant, the most well-informed traders in the world, the central banks and sovereign wealth funds, are buying hand over fist. The American public has their thumb in their rear buying Apple and NVIDIA and Bitcoin. Not saying there's anything wrong with those things, but what I'm saying is instant gratification is not fast enough for the American public. This is too boring for them. It's too volatile. It's too counterintuitive. You better understand what you're doing to take a position in gold and silver. And if you do, it becomes very obvious that over time, gold and silver will assert themselves in a way that most people will be shocked when it finally happens. It's easy to dismiss a market that is counterintuitive and does not move in any speed, if you will. But I think that will be a big mistake. The underestimation of how important silver and gold are and how important they are to people's portfolios will be a very big mistake for those who never realized it. So yeah, again, just beginning, Jesse. And I think things will start to accelerate as we are getting later in the hour in this Keynesian system and this dollar-based debt system, which I believe is getting very late in the game. You'll start to see this become more evident, and certainly gold leading the way here, busting through all-time highs again at 2470 almost as we speak.
It's no secret that the world's politics are changing in a big way. Move power from the west to the east, or at least make the world multipolar, so that different parts of the world have a say in global politics and the economy. Andy and other resource analysts are sure that this new world order will make commodities like gold and silver more valuable and less reliant on fiat currencies like the dollar. They think that this will make the global economy much more stable and reliable than the current debt-based fiat system, which is prone to inflation and manipulation. He says that the planning for this change has already been done, and that the prices of gold and silver could go through the roof once everything is in place. What do you think about the real value of gold and silver? Do you agree with Andy's statements that silver prices will stop being manipulated? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Click the bell icon and watch more of our movies. Great to have you listen.